Great circuit, great duel-in prospect. We've got Toprak Razgatlioglu and Jonathan Ray in the top 2 positions on the grid. Back-to-back poles for Razgatlioglu, 3rd race in a row that he has managed to out-qualify the man now confirmed as the Tissot Superpole Award winner for this 2021 campaign, Jonathan Ray.
I think even bigger than taking the pole position is Jonathan Ray led the way in free practice 1. He led the way in free practice 2. He led the way in free practice 3. He set the pace on his first 2 laps in the Superpole session, and right at the end, Toprak found 0.3 of a second. Raised the man under pressure right now.
Does rather look like a head-to-head for the victory as things stand, but plenty of candidates for what may well turn out to be the final step on the podium.
I think it looks like, once again, Toprak and Jonathan have that bit of an edge over everyone else. In terms of the outright pace for everyone, does look there's a bit of a step behind them. Scott Redding on the 2nd row of the grid, expect him to be really strong over the course of the full 20 laps. Expect Locatelli from the 3rd row to make some progress. Loris Baz has actually looked very good on some of his longer runs. And then Garrett Gerloff on the 3rd row of the grid as well. He's at good pace this weekend. It's just about whether or not Gerloff's able to make a good start, have a good run through those first couple of laps, and then attack riders.
Toprak Razgatlioglu is your series leader, and he also is very much the man of the moment. Double winner 6 days ago in Jerez at 20 points, as we've said, his series lead, and that is the largest he's ever had. Bigger margins than that, of course, have been squandered in the past. You only need to think back to Tom Sykes in 2014. He was 44 points up with 3 rounds to go and still went on to lose the title. We could certainly be heading to another of those last race showdowns in 2021.
Yeah, you really can't rule it out because it's been so closely matched between this man Toprak and Jonathan Ray all the way through the season. Toprak is the rider that's been probably a little bit of a step ahead. He hasn't made any mistakes this year, finds himself 20 points clear in the championship. That could easily be a lot more if he hadn't had the technical issue in Catalonia or the crash in race 2 in Aston with Garrett Gerloff.
What a brilliant performance from him, particularly last time out. Race 2 in Jerez really showed he's not sort of overthinking his 2021 title race. He didn't pull his punches against Scott Redding and just accept the 20 championship points. He took his opportunity to score 25. That shows real confidence.
Yeah, it was funny. I bumped into Toprak after race 2 in Jerez, just leaving the paddock, super relaxed. He was just wheeling a bicycle around the place as he does, and I said to him, Toprak, like, I really thought you were going to just settle for 20 points. Toprak looked at me and just said, you know what, I just wanted to win. And that's Toprak all over. He just wants to win right now.
Jonathan Ray here in Portimão. This is one of those venues that he'll have been targeting for some time for a big points haul. It's a venue he knows better than any other rider. He made his Superbike debut here in 2008. He is the only rider to have taken part in every Superbike race staged here, and he's won almost half of them. Staggering statistics, whichever way you look at the numbers around this venue.
Yeah, he's only been beaten here once on a Kawasaki. He needs to make sure he maintains that record all the way through this weekend. This is where he can make up big points in the World Championship, but only if he wins all 3 races.
Yes, we know it's possible for Ray to make up major margins. He gained 27 points on Toprak in Aragon at the start of the season. He gained 39 points on the Yamaha man in Assen with 3 race wins. And as we say, like Assen, this is a circuit that Ray has really made his own. He
struggled a little bit in the Superpole session compared to what we would have expected. I think, given that he never really hooked up his best lap, it would have been a bit disappointing for him to not be able to do that, end up second on the grid. The one thing about Ray is, speaking to him yesterday, he said that Kawasaki's made a big step forward in terms of the settings for the bike, especially in the hot conditions. He really feels like now he's able to break that bike and decelerate all the way into the corner. That's been the weakness for that bike this year.
Scott Redding here has actually outscored Jonathan Ray by 10 points over the last 6 rounds. He's only dropped 8 points to Toprak over that same spell. The 66-point handicap that he had leaving Donington Park dropped points in the opening 4 rounds of this campaign. That's what's costing him a shot at the title. He's now 74 points back from the series leader.
And for Scott Redding, it's been that inconsistency that's been the big thing for him and for Ducati all the way through this season. Redding hasn't really made too many mistakes this season, but we have seen it at different rounds where in different track conditions, it's just been really difficult to get that Ducati into the right working environment.
Didn't have the best of weekends here last season, Redding. He conceded the series lead at this venue and picked up only 7th position in race 1, although he did go on to an improved race 2 showing and took 2nd place to round out his weekend. That's often been the case for Ducati. They've tended to come good as the weekend has gone on. Further back then, the battle for 4th in the World Championship now looks like a head-to-head between Michael Ruben Rinaldi and Andrea Locatelli. Unfortunately, we're going to be without Alex Lowes over the course of this weekend. He did valiantly come out over the course of Friday and actually was fast right from the start of the weekend, but his crashes in the most recent feature-length race, race 2 in Barcelona, took a heavy knock to his right hand. That forced him to sit out race 2 in Jerez, and unfortunately he's withdrawn here in Portimão.
Yeah, Portimão is, as Alex's tweet shows there, one of the most physically demanding tracks that we go to all the way through the season. Kawasaki, obviously, they need Lowe's to be at full fitness for as long as possible through this season. Argentina and Indonesia, they're the key rounds for the championship. They're where the championship is going to be decided. Jonathan Ray's fast enough here in Portimão that he probably will be pretty pleased if Lowe's is able to get himself back to full fitness and really get himself into the mix in these final 2 rounds. It's been a tough couple of weeks for Lowe's after that crash in Catalonia, but the one thing for him is really fast in Jerez, fast here yesterday as well, so it does go to show, even if he is a little bit below par in terms of his body right now, the speed's right there.
Michael van der Mark 7th in the World Championship, where he finished his debut Superbike season in 2015. Of course, he's effectively taken a step backwards. BMW still part-way through their project, but he has been consistent without either the real peaks or troughs of teammate Tom Sykes' season. Of course, Sykes is also missing this weekend, and Eugene Laverty once again steps in for him. First front row start in 2021 for Leon Haslam. He will line up P3 after what was an excellent Superpole performance from him.
Yeah, and for Haslam, first front row of the season, first front row since Estoril last year, and really positive for Honda to be able to have that. It's going to be interesting to see how he fares during the races. We have seen it throughout this year that Bautista has raced better than Haslam. Haslam's qualified better than him, but this weekend we won't have the X tyre available to the riders during the feature length races. That super soft compound tyre only available for the 10-lap Superpole race. That could make a big difference for someone like Leon Haslam. He won't be at a disadvantage now in the race. It
could make a fair difference up at the front of the field as well. The expectation is that Jonathan Ray, of the 2 title contenders, is the rider who stands to gain the most.
Yeah, and for Jonathan Ray, he's tended to have to use that harder tyre throughout the course of this season. We've seen Toprak in pretty much all conditions able to use that super soft compound, but we've seen that this weekend, obviously, everyone in a slightly different boat, and we'll wait and see if that has a big impact over the course of 20 laps.
Loris Baz here coming in for a second weekend to replace the injured Chaz Davies. Davies resting up at home and hoping to be fit in time to return in Argentina. Less than 2 weeks until we go to Argentina. Feels almost surreal after what's been a European boat-based championship since the beginning of the pandemic situation. But finally, we're just about ready to get underway with some end-of-season flyaways.
Yeah, and those 2 final rounds are going to be really interesting to see what happens. Argentina and Indonesia. We saw Loris Baz there leave the pits. Obviously, over the course of the last weekend in Jerez, this weekend so far here in Portimão, he's been able to show that he still warrants a spot on the World SBK grid. But whether that'll be with the Go 11 team remains to be decided. The big rumour around the paddock over the last few weeks has been that Go 11 might switch to Yamaha for next season. If that's the case, that could rule Baz out of contention for that seat. But hopefully he finds a home somewhere, because he's done a really good job this weekend.
Alvaro Bautista, we can see, making his way out of his pit box. 3rd place last time out in Jerez for him, and very much merited as well. He had to pass Jonathan Ray and then Andrea Locatelli. No doubting his and Honda's recent improvements. 4 consecutive races inside the top 5 for Bautista. He qualifies 6th here today. That's his best Superpole performance of 2021. Best performance of the season as well in Superpole for Leon Haslam. Honda's up towards the front. It's good news for the sport.
Yeah, really good. We've seen 5 manufacturers inside the top 5 in the Superpole session. Honda, the only manufacturer with 2 riders on the front 2 rows of the grid. Bautista comes here with a lot of form, comes here with his tail high, and hopefully for him he's able to back up what we saw in Catalonia, back up what we saw in Jerez, come away with another top 5 finish. That would really show the progress for Honda, because they don't have the extensive testing here in Portimão that they had in Jerez or Catalonia.
As far as the tyre conversation is concerned, will Toprak Razgatlioglu be unduly concerned about Jonathan Ray riding on a tyre that he has ridden plenty of laps on, of course, over the course of this season? Maybe Toprak feels like one of his points of advantage has been lost, and at a circuit like this that Jonathan Ray knows so well, that might not be good news for Toprak.
I don't think Toprak seems like a rider that really wants to be unsettled by any of those things. He just wants to focus on the race. He knows that he's got 20 laps to set as fast a lap time as possible for every single one of those 20 laps, try and come away with the race victory. He also knows he's got 20 points in hand over Jonathan Ray. He's had really good results at the circuits where he's been expected to be strong this year. Now it's up to Jonathan Ray to do the same. He did that in Assen earlier this year when he won all 3 races. This is the other round that he was expected to be right at the front all the way through.
Little doubt about it, though. It is Toprak Razgatlioglu who is the man with the momentum. 57 points gained over Jonathan Ray over the last 5 rounds. He's won no less than 7 races in that spell.
Yeah, and for Toprak, it's been such a really strong vein of form, and he's been able to show everyone just how good he can be. This is the rider that everyone expected Toprak to be a few years ago. This is the rider that was earmarked as the future star right from his stock 600 days. He actually had a great race here against Michael Ruben Rinaldi a few years ago in the stock class. This was one of those days where he really showed himself as being a potential superstar. Over the course of the last 6 years, he's been able to build his career all the way to this point. Now it's up to him with 9 races to go, 3 rounds to go to get that first World Championship.
Can anyone go with Razgatlioglu and Ray over the course of 20 laps?
I don't think so. I think that they've shown themselves this weekend to have that bit of a margin on everyone else. And the other part of that is the other riders that have been strong for their longer runs are coming from a little bit further down. Garrett Gerloff's been quite strong. He's on the 3rd row of the grid. And given his form over the last few rounds, the first 2-3 laps are going to be critical for Gerloff. If he's able to get through them cleanly and still be in those leading positions, maybe he's got the potential to go with Ray and Razgatlioglu. But right now, these 2 riders look like they've got that little bit of a step on everyone.
We saw the 2 of them clash last time out in Jerez. It's made good column inches over the course of the 5 days that we've had between Jerez and here. Is there a chance that we're going to see more of that kind of combat? Because neither of them has been willing to give an inch so far. And I don't see that changing. No,
they're not going to give an inch to one another. They're going to go bar to bar, and they're going to settle this on the racetrack. And that's why I'm excited about the championship battle between them, because it's unlike any other battle we've seen. It's 2 riders going absolutely hard as nails against each other, neither of them giving an inch, and all of them just really battling it out. And that's what you want to see. You want to see a World Championship decided by who's be able to do the better job over the course of what's going to be 38 races this season in the Superbike class. And as long as we get that at the end of the season, there's going to be no complaints from either of them.
Ultimately, the reality is, though, a retirement for either rider could be utterly disastrous, particularly with such a small margin between the 2 of them.
And that's been the big difference between them this season. Toprak's had 2 retirements. Ray's had 2 retirements. Toprak hasn't put a foot wrong. Ray's had, well, 3 crashes in 2 races, and that's been the difference between them.
Toprak Razgatlioglu then starts from pole position here today. He's outscored Jonathan Ray in 6 of the last 8 rounds. He's come from 35 points down after Estoril to lead by 20 on our return to Portugal this weekend. He twice finished second to Jonathan Ray here in Portimão last season. 37 points, his 2nd highest scoring weekend of that season. He'll be targeting a first Portimão win here.
Yeah, you can see Team Turkey around Toprak there. You got Keenan in the background, Chan Onchu, Phil Marin as crew chief there. And they really do form a tight unit, and that's been one of the secrets for Toprak over the last few years and his big step forward. He feels so comfortable wherever he goes in the paddock that he really does feel that he's in a position to always be able to get right to the front. Yes,
Razgatlioglu certainly building that team around him. He starts from pole position ahead of his championship rival, Jonathan Ray. Just 2 race victories in the last 14. He hasn't won a feature-length race since Assen, and surely that's got to change this weekend. 20 podiums from 26 starts in Portimão. He's only once been beaten here since joining Kawasaki.
Yeah, you can see there those 2 blips for Jonathan Ray. Donington Park crashing while chasing Toprak. In the Czech Republic in Most, crashing while chasing Toprak. He's been chasing his tail a little bit against Toprak in the last few rounds, but this is the round where Ray will expect to be able to answer it back. This is where he needs to answer the call and make sure he's able to win this race especially.
Yes, as we've said, Razgatlioglu has appeared to have a slight edge over Jonathan Ray in recent rounds, in recent races. So it's Razgatlioglu and Ray, P1 and P2. This is Leon Haslam, 26 points in the last 2 rounds, while teammate Bautista scored more than double that with 54. Haslam now 65 points adrift of his teammate overall. He was 13th with Pata Honda in 2013. It's the same position again for Haslam in 2021. I'm sure he would like to make steps forward and gain a podium position here. Let's go down to the grid with our pit reporter Anthony Nelson.
Thanks, Alex and Daniel, with Leon Camio. And Leon, we're by Avro in P6. We've got Leon a bit up ahead in P3. It's been really consistent in qualifying for the guys. How do you feel going into this one?
Definitely a good weekend so far. Alvaro has definitely had a good qualifying. Race pace is okay, not quite as strong as we would like, but he's also very capable of pulling something out in the race. It's not been the smoothest of weekends for him, so a little bit difficult to also judge. Leon has had a much better weekend. We've changed some ways of working and idea, concept of how to set the bike with him, and we found we've definitely made a step with this. So very positive. We just need to see how the race will go now. Obviously, wind is a fair bit different than the rest of the weekend, but same condition for everyone. So looking forward to the race.
Best of luck.
Thank you.
Michael van der Mark here lines up P5. Either side of him, Scott Redding 4th and Alvaro Bautista 6th. Van der Mark with 6 podiums to his name from 12 starts in Portimão. Statistically, this one of his best tracks. He was on the podium in both feature-length races here last season. Different challenge on BMW machinery, of course, just a single podium so far this season, and that dates back to the Superpole race at the UK round.
Yeah, really positive for Van der Mark, though, to have that good qualifying effort on the second row of the grid, and gives himself a good opportunity for the race now today. But the one thing is, we've seen big gaps in the field throughout the course of this weekend, and that's where Van der Mark's kind of been able to slot himself into, but over the course of the race, he needs to be really consistent to hold on to a top 5 spot. 5
podiums in the last 6 races for Scott Redding. Not quite in the sparkling form that we saw from him in Most and Navarra, but enough not to drop too much further away after his race 1 dramas. Remember, back to Manicourt. 30 podiums now on his World SBK account after a 3rd and a 2nd in Jerez. That's Scott Redding, who lines up 4th position. Really didn't have the best of weekends here last season, conceded the series lead and picked up only 7th place in race 1, although he did go on then to an improved race 2 showing with 2nd. Heard from Leon Camier a couple of moments ago. Alvaro Bautista is his 2nd man. Leon Haslam starts from P3, Bautista from 6th. 23, 27 and 27, his 3 most recent round yields. They are his best scoring 3 weekends since joining Honda. He arrives in Portimão all smiles, high on confidence after podiums in back-to-back weekends in Spain. Bautista completes the 2nd row of the grid.
Yeah, Bautista in a great vein of form over those last 2 rounds. Honda making a lot of progress. Good to see them both up there in the top 6 positions on the grid.
Andrea Locatelli, Garrett Gerloff and Loris Baz are on row 3. Locatelli 2 4th places in Jerez on Sunday. He's now finished 10 Superbike races in 4th position. He could well claim the same ranking in the World Championship as well. Only a relatively low-scoring weekend in Barcelona, temporarily halting his progress. Andrea Locatelli then will line up from 7th on the grid. Garrett Gerloff here alongside him, P8. Another Yamaha man, of course. 12.8 his average score over the last 6 rounds. That's actually the same as his average over the course of the 2020 season as a whole. We really had expected more, particularly after those podiums in Aragon and Donington Park. It's 17 races now without a top 3 finish for the Texan. 2 10th place finishes on Sunday in Jerez. He really hasn't looked at ease of late. This weekend, a chance to show how far he's come since the early stages of 2020. 14th, 10th and 11th were his 3 results here last season. Garrett Gerloff will line up from 8th position on the grid. Loris Baz alongside him. Both of these riders had fared somewhat better over the course of free practice than they were able to do with the Q tyre on earlier on this morning. Baz P9 took one of 4 2020 podiums here in Portimão. This his 2nd weekend back, as I said previously, as a substitute for Chaz Davies. 6th and 9th, his 2 results on Sunday in Jerez. It's been a strong effort so far.
Yeah, and I think for Baz,